I love you as well. A new trailer was released yesterday announcing Rallycross for Project Cars. Lots of action in the trailer. And so we're going to talk about the preview event that we went to yesterday, playing the game, more impressions on what we've seen so far. So, of course, I'm joined again today by Martin.
Hi, guys.
Kevin.
Hello.
And Ed.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, guys. So basically, yesterday we saw the trailer. Less said about the music, the better. But the graphics and the action certainly looks good. Kevin, bit of a surprise to everybody. What did you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, just the sheer amount of Rallycross content really surprised me. You know, it's going to be, you know, a real sort of in competition with the likes of Dirt Rally and Dirt 4. You know, there's so much content there, which is one of the criticisms we had of the Dirt games. So, you know, just as it's, you know, Rallycross, you don't really expect a lot with Project Cars 2 regarding Rallycross. You feel like it's like a bolt-on just to say they've got this. But honestly, it looks like they've really sort of gone to town on it and made it a real sort of beefy package. So I was really surprised just to see how big that package actually was. And that trailer for me, apart from the music, was cracking. I thought it really showed off the sort of, you know, the elements of Rallycross, the speed, you know, the dust flying, the cars zooming past, the good sound that the game has. But, you know, perhaps the tracks themselves missing crowds, you know, a little bit of life, perhaps it's a bit void of a bit of life, maybe.
Yeah, certainly a bit of atmosphere needed. But I think in terms of, it's still early development. We don't know what's going to be added yet and everything else. But in terms of the fact that they've, you know, the game is clearly going to support different disciplines of motorsport.
Yes.
It handles a complete discipline here with a Rallycross. Very impressive. Martin, what were your impressions of the trailer?
Yeah, pretty much the same as Kevin, to be honest. It really got, it really showed the intensity of the sport really well. But like you also said, the less said about the music, the better. It made my ears bleed. I think is all I'll say about that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's such a contrast, isn't it, to the kind of, you know, the kind of grandiose orchestral scores they've had in the other trailers. They have that sort of epic feel to it. I can see what they're trying to do there. They're trying to get across the kind of unpredictability of Rallycross, I think, with it, but it just didn't work.
No, I think, like you say, I mean, this is a rival to Codemasters, and there's no doubt that Codemasters will have looked at that trailer yesterday and thought, "Oh goodness, no, that's the first time that they've got a major contender." You know, over the past few years, their contender's been Milestone. Now it's Slightly Mad Studios who are coming into the scene, and so I think they wanted to do a slightly Dude Bro trailer, maybe slightly Dude Bro / Chav trailer in some way.
Yeah, I was wondering if they were trying to mimic Codemasters, though, I must say, with the old kind of Dirt 2 era.
It sort of does, but it's either way. I think it certainly I think was impressive what we saw in the trailer. So let's move on to the actual event now. And obviously we've popped along to this event. Andy Tudor is presenting and talking to people about Project Cars. He's showing the amount of circuits in the game. 7 circuits, I think, were shown. All very impressive.
That's more than Dirt Rally, is it not? Sorry.
Yes, more than Dirt Rally. So
Dirt Rally.
There's more Rallycross in the unofficial Rallycross section of Project Cars 2 than there is in the entire of Dirt 4, which is amazing, really, isn't it? I mean, like you say, you would think that there was a rule to what has to be in the official title.
Yes.
And we you know what? That's one of the things that we complained about in Dirt Rally, that there weren't enough locations.
Yeah.
We've looked at Dirt 4, and one of our our concerns, shall we say, is the fact there's not enough of any given discipline. And here we are with a very impressive looking, you know, Project Cars 2 with this new Rallycross add-on, which adds in a whole new audience.
Yeah.
A much younger age group will be interested in it, but it's got to be playable. That's the main thing. So it was on display yesterday. They had big motion rigs. Ed, you tested out the motion rig of the Rallycross. Running VR with a massively expensive motion system. What did you make of it?
Well, yeah, my first go on the Rallycross, the Rallycross one that was there. There was 2 there. There was one that was like a fully fledged, the proper Rallycross cars. I think you're driving a new Honda Civic one, the Red Bull liveried one. And then there was another one behind it, which was in the sort of the lower class Rallycross cars, was less power, bit more easy to handle, and the track that they were on was a lot more simple as well. But the fully fledged one was the first one that I had to go on, who had to go right before me, who was like this pro gamer. He had like ESL pro gaming like jersey on and stuff, and the guy I was standing next to was like, yeah, this guy, he knows what he's doing, and he's like ripping it round all the corners and sliding into every single one. He's like, he pulled the handbrake and stuff like 100 meters before the corner and was like sliding in with loads of angle and stuff. I was like, okay, right, I've got to get in this seat after him now, and
no pressure.
Yeah, exactly. And I jumped in there, and initial impressions were that everything that I thought was maybe slightly wrong with the force feedback and how it was reacting to bumps, especially on the rear end of the car, from what I experienced the last time I played Project Cars 2, which was admittedly on an ice track as well, so it's a bit different. Everything that was wrong with it then I couldn't feel at all this time. The car was behaving exactly as I was expecting it to, especially when if you're sliding into a corner in a rallycross car, really, because it's four-wheel drive and it's got loads of power, you can slide it in with loads of angle, keep the steering wheel straight and floor it, and it will hold that slide all the way through the corner. And it was doing that exactly like how I was expecting it to. And after about 2 laps, I was already feeling like I was sort of knowing what I was doing, which is amazing, really, when you consider I'd never really tried VR properly before. I was in this full motion rig, which I did go over a bump and hit a wall at one point, and it smacked me in the back in a way that I actually thought I was in a car that had just had a rear end collision. Goodness. So that was amazing. And getting used to all of that, plus the fact they turned the gear knob off for some unknown reason. So I was trying to handbrake and then go back to a paddle shifter to change gear with a steering wheel that's like spinning round all the time. So you have no idea if you're going up or down a gear because you've got no idea which way up the steering wheel is. There's all that going on, and still by the second or third lap, I was putting together some really nice corners. It was really intuitive. I was really impressed, and the transition between tarmac to dirt as well was something that I think they've really nailed. And the fact that there's the difference and the way that it presents itself in the way that the car handles is something that you can pick up on very quickly and adapt to very quickly as well. I was able to time my entries into, there's one corner in particular where it starts off and all the way through to just where the apex is all tarmac, and then dirt comes in from the left hand side and covers the track, and you knew about that as it was coming up. And after 2 laps where I'd experienced it, I was no longer going too fast into the corner. I knew to just hit the brakes as I was coming up to the apex, because the car was going to slide out a bit more because it was getting on the dirt. It was so intuitive. I was so impressed. I could talk for ages about it. I wasn't, after my first experience on the ice driving and the really early build that we were on then, I wasn't sure of how it was going to go, but yeah, I think they've done a really good job from what I can tell so far.
Yeah, I mean,
I was just about to say that assist on or off.
I think everything was set to real. Everything was set to real, as far as I'm aware. Cool. So there definitely wasn't anything to save you. And I was just going to say, actually, wow, is it tough? It's really hard. It's really technical, and
I want to ask that fully.
I was racing around and realized that, when it comes to cars on racetracks, I've experienced it. I get that. When it comes to even a bit of rally, when it comes to rallycross, it's a very different discipline, and you jump in it for the first time. The gear ratios are very short.
Yes.
And I went into the corner and I just sort of, I don't think I made the first corner. I was like, oh, right, I need to brake earlier than that, shift down a gear further. I need to pull the handbrake here. And, the first 2 corners are basically connected. You swing one way and then you swing the car around the other way, and it's a downhill section. So you need to get into it nice and early. And it was quite tricky. And also then when you drive up from the tarmac onto the dirt, suddenly the car really understeers. But if you pull the handbrake, you can get it sideways and really slide it nicely. the handling is much more in depth now. It's much more intuitive, and it's beyond my real world knowledge in that sense. I don't have a real reference. You know, a lot of people, when they see sims, they say, "Oh, that's not like real life. That's like real life." Well, generally, a lot of stuff you can sort of predict. You know, if you've had a relative experience, but this is all sort of new, and you know, it's specialist driving skills and stuff like that. But either way, it was very intuitive. You could see they've really worked on handling, and on display was both the Rallycross car and the Indy car, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the handling's much looser with the car now. You know, the back end will step out, but you can control it. You can fight the car all the way around, more on the limit. Cool. There's a lot of improvements.
Do you know in advance when the the traction's braking, and can you catch that slide, which was a criticism?
Much better now. Yeah, much better. Okay, I mean, awesome. I've caught slides, and you're fighting that car on the limit of grip now, and you can save it. You know, you've got to react quick, but you can save the car, and it behaves in a more, you know, believable way all round now. So yeah, the Rallycross handling is. It's going to need assists. Obviously, I haven't played it with all the assists on, but it's going to be nice and playable, I'm sure, with assists. But without assists, it is a mighty challenge. There's no doubt about that.
I found the Rallycross in Dirt Rally very difficult at the time. Would you say Project Cars 2 takes it beyond that level?
I felt greater feeling of traction in. I was getting more feedback from Project Cars than Dirt Rally. There was always a thing in Dirt Rally where at first, during the year, when I first played it, I never got the feeling of speed right. I never felt the speed very, very well in terms of the field of view they were using, whatever it was. And in terms of traction, I never felt the traction. I was, I remember saying when I first played it that some of the calls from the co-driver weren't always accurate, depending on the corner. I felt they did improve it, by the way, over time. Various improvements were made, but and there's just a general feeling of traction and lumps and bumps and stuff. You can feel it react in the car, and you can feel how you need to get into those corners, and it was just feeling right. The whatever the field of view was, or whatever it was communicating, was just in a way that it felt natural. So massive improvements been made in terms of, I say massive improvements. I mean, one thing about Project Cars 1 is a lot of people slate the handling of Project Cars 1, and I don't always agree with that. I've had hours of fun on Project Cars 1, but some cars handle better than others. Yes. And Assetto Corsa, if you like, redefined what was great. You know, so we know now that Assetto Corsa is out there. We know that they've got, in terms of weight balance and everything else, they've got a really good setup. So they've got a target there, and they've really sort of moved towards that target. But Rallycross, yeah, I mean, first impressions are very impressive. I think just overall, really, it was a bit like we said about the trailer. It just needs a bit more atmosphere in terms of crowds and activity. It felt like all the stadiums were sort of empty, I guess. And it needs
what you guys were talking about with the music in the trailer. I thought it was sick music. It was wicked.
Yeah.
I love a bit of wub wub and boof, 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 as it's coming in, and like the car like hits the ground, and the music goes. It was sick.
Exactly. Well, there you go, Ed. You see, you're younger than us, and I think what that says is maybe that's for your generation. Yeah, the Red Hill Massive. Boom. Let's get Andy Tudor on the tunes. Tune.
To me, it just sounds like someone playing with saucepans. I'm sorry, but
yeah. You know what? Yeah, I mean, that music thing, I think it's a divisive thing, isn't it, that music?
Yeah,
but I really do think it depends on your age and what the interest is. But they know that they're going for this younger audience with the Rallycross. They want to get the dirt audience. They want to get the Forza Horizon audience. Yeah, it is a sort of teenage audience, and they want it to be cool and stuff like that. You know, we're just too old on this channel to be cool. It's as simple as that. So we just say it as we see it. And what people are going to care about is they're going to care about, does it play well? Can I drive it? Yeah, you can play it. You can drive it. You know, so far so good. I mean, that's all you can say on that, really, isn't it, Ed?
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, actually, did you get much of a chance to notice the differences in the AI on the Rallycross? Something I noted down.
No, because I didn't really. The AI is still a work in development anyway at this stage. I know that.
Definitely. So, definitely on the circuit stuff, I noticed the AI was a bit, you know, here or there. But the Rallycross, I noticed it was a bit more aggressive, which I think definitely suits that kind of racing.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be sort of bump and grind racing. If there was one thing about Project Cars 1 was I had some of the best races, single player races, in any game ever on Project Cars 1. When it worked well, wow, I had some great races. But then I'd have some races where they just didn't seem to understand how to take a corner and the whole field would crash off, basically. So it's this time they've got the time to get it right. And I think if they get that right, the thing is that it's tricky with Rallycross because, and Codemasters will face this as well, because you've got a lot of cars close together, bumping into each other and everything else. It's a lot for the AI to cope with. So, you know, in terms of aggressiveness, in terms of bumping and all that, I mean, there's a lot still to do. But if Codemasters are doing it, then, you know, they need to raise their game and match that as well. So either way, a new challenger to
definitely
Codemasters there. And I think, you know, we're going to see how it develops. I mean, Dirt 4 comes out in June. Codemasters haven't wanted to show us Dirt 4 for whatever reason. And so, you know, certainly from what we've seen, they've got a fierce challenge in terms of Project Cars 2. So moving on at the event, there was also the chance to try some of the other games and test out the controller. We're going to get to that in just a moment. I just thought I'd mention there was, of course, the IndyCar that was on display there, and that was on a time trial challenge. Again, another VR rig, and it was very competitive on there. Really enjoyed it, and you'll see in the footage that we're looking at here. I had 3 goes on it. The first go, I was just trying to get used. It was so bumpy. I came off with pretty terrible motion sickness after my first run, but I went back on it again. I kind of got through. If you've ever used a VR headset, you go through what I call the sweat stage, where you start to feel rough, and if you can get through that stage sometimes and go back on again, you'll feel all right. It's just a funny stage of playing VR. You've got to fight through the pain. So I went on it first time, very bumpy, but wow, was it amazing playing on the IndyCar, racing around Long Beach. So I had a go, set a time, and was a couple of seconds off the other guys, but we were all sort of miles ahead of all the other people there. And it was quite interesting, actually, because there were lots of famous YouTubers and racing guys there and all that, including your ESL guys, and none of them, either they set times and then didn't want them on the leaderboard because they weren't competitive, or they were just too nervous to go on it, which was quite funny. So in the end, it was just sort of, there's this core 5 of us there that were just keeping up there. And I think we all got it. I spoke to Yorkie, who's been testing the game for some time, and we had a very brief interview in our video you'll have seen yesterday, and he mentioned about slow in fast out with that car. And so I went back afterwards, and then I did a 109. So there was myself, Nick Hamilton, and Yorkie all sort of within 3/10, and I was ahead on the first 2 sectors, but then sort of cruised through the final sector. So I definitely found more time there. And the trick with that car was you had to go very slow into the apex and then gently apply the throttle using all the circuit on the exit. It's slightly different to how I normally drive, because how I normally drive is I brake and then I'll turn in at the limit of traction, try to carry speed through the corner and then gently get on the power. But instead you can't here. You have to be slow going into the apex to get on the power early. And that way you can really position the car through the apex where you want it to be on the exit. So speed's improved radically. That was great fun. Wow, I have to say, really intense in the IndyCar. What did you think of it, Ed?
Yeah, it was amazing. I was a bit annoyed that my second go on it wasn't as fast as my first go, because the first go on it, you're sort of still getting used to it, and it was quite messy. And I was really aggressive with my driving. And then the second go, I was super smooth. I was really proud of the laps that I put in, and I was a 10th slower. So that was unbelievable. But yeah, it was really good fun. The track, I was impressed at the amount of detail in the track, because obviously previous experience of Long Beach in a game is on Forza, and there was much more to take in. The lighting is really well executed on that track as well. The bumps as well are much more pronounced, and you get the feeling, okay, I'm on a street circuit because of the bumps and where the things are, and you're like, oh, okay, I actually don't want to hold it out all the way on the outside of this corner because there's a massive bump on the exit there, and if I'm full throttle I might spin out. And there's all this sort of detail coming in. In fact, when when we were outside eating the tacos there, Andy Tudor came past, and I mentioned to him I was impressed at how much detail there was on the Long Beach circuit, and he was like, "Well, I hope so. We spent so much time on it." So he was probably expecting that sort of reaction. But yeah, it was really impressive. The rig as well, and the amount of movement that you're getting there, again, was giving the kind of feedback that I've never experienced before. And it was once you start getting used to it and you can start recognizing things, you can really make use of that extra feedback. The rear end of the car, I was really impressed with how the rear end of the car behaved. I don't know about how you felt about that, Alan, but I felt like
well, I'll mention
very
that.
well
I've noticed that's a big difference with this. I mean, there's not the downforce in IndyCar that there is in sort of Formula One, so you've really felt the fact that there was less downforce there. I found that all the cars I've mentioned are a bit more loose to the rear now. That's a big difference with project cars. And until you've tested all the cars, and until I get the chance to test GT cars and Le Mans and everything, I won't know how that affects all of the different vehicles in terms of being able to feel like I can really push. But certainly going into corners now with the IndyCar, it was very tricky to drive, and you can't just jump from one car into an Indy car just like that. It's a completely different driving style. It's much more progressive. The brake pedal was quite soft, so it's much heavier on the brakes. It's a challenge. It's a mighty challenge, but if you practice at it, you will be able to. I think a lot of people will be fine with assists on, because a lot of the problems that people are having is spinning up the rear wheels, losing traction, spinning out. That was the biggest problem for most people. I think if you had traction control and stability control, you'd have been taking those corners no problem. But with all of that off, it's, you think, wow, it's a really heavy challenge, but it felt so intense and it felt so rewarding when you start hooking those corners up. And then you start to get faster and faster. Then you find new limits and finding the limit again. And I think it's funny with everybody doing the lap times, we're improving. One thing to point out, actually, I think with events like this, if you've never done competitive events and stuff, is you play on your own rig and you think you understand how it works. But when you go to an event like this, you're playing on an entirely different rig. I mean, the brake pedal was completely different. We were all talking about it. Yeah. The brake pedal required quite a lot of physical force. Whereas I don't need that much physical force. I've a very sensitive brake. Also, something I've commented a lot in my videos is I don't have high force feedback settings. I have force feedback generally pretty low. It's changed a bit since I've had this new TSPC racer wheel, because that really that fights you. But generally, I tend to turn down because of wheel preservation primarily. I don't want to break my force feedback. So it was completely different. So you have to learn again how it's going to communicate with you and how you're going to feel the car. But every corner, there were some very tricky corners there where you could feel the back end going, and then you throw in some opposite lock and you manage to keep it in a straight line, or you try various techniques to try and keep yourself pointing in the right direction. But as soon as you start to lose the rear end, if you haven't corrected violently in the right direction straight away, you will spin out. So it was great seeing people working at the wheel, and especially obviously the people who are very quick. For me, that's not my style. And in fact, my fastest laps, I had found a way to actually, I suppose when I did a slightly slower time, I was working the wheel a bit more. But then when I found out how to take the apexes properly, I adapted back to my smoother style again, and that was making me much quicker. And I just wanted to highlight this one point. If you ever play racing games and you're getting beaten by people, you think, oh, they're beating me, they must be quicker than me. Yeah, I remember being in a competition years ago when I was playing some of the best people in the UK, and I was 2 seconds off on this lap, and I was like, how can they, or a second, whatever it was, off on this lap. I'm thinking, how can they beat me by that kind of distance? And then I found out on one corner that if I shifted into a different gear, I was faster all the way down the straight, and I made all that time up just on one corner. It wasn't I couldn't do it, I just didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what gear I was supposed to be in or how to find it. And as soon as I knew, it's kind of like this yesterday, as soon as I understood, oh, that's what they're doing, that's why they're going faster. It's really more about knowing. So I just watched them doing their driving and then copied them and realized, oh, I see. and then you get the technique and you go much quicker. But yeah, suffice to say, I know when people do these things on their home rigs, they say, oh, I could do much better on my home rig. Absolutely. But when you turn up and you're in an environment and everybody's sort of under pressure and you're bumping up and down viciously in a VR headset, it's a completely different experience. But good fun. So IndyCar, wow. Also audio, great. Love the audio, I'm just going to say, on both cars. Sounded pretty awesome to me. I don't know what you thought of it. But the IndyCar was cracking. Going under bridges along Beach, wow! Loving the echo feedback.
Awesome. Yeah, and you could hear each gangway as you went under each one. That was quite good. It wasn't
really
like
nice sound.
Sometimes you get on games where it enters into like a tunnel mode and it sort of fades in and out of it. But in this one, it was like there are two walkways that go over you after one of the corners. And you could hear both of them go past of you. So it's like, ying, ying, as it goes past you. It's like, sweet.
It's amazing. Really nice feeling. It's a very bumpy section on the track as well. Wow, you go over some big bumps going into that section, I tell you. So IndyCar's in the game. Obviously, they have the official license for IndyCar. One has to expect that they have the whole field of IndyCars, and they have the whole field of IndyCars, and what else? All the circuits in there as well.
Yep.
And I'm just going to throw in there a bit of news today. What would be great is, of course, Fernando Alonso today has mentioned that he's not going to be racing at Monaco, and instead he's going to be racing in the Indy 500. Wouldn't it be great to have a Fernando Alonso car in Project Cars to do the Indy 500? I would love that. That would be awesome, just to race Fernando, because Fernando. Anyway, IndyCar, fantastic. Rallycross already got more than the official Rallycross game, so that's looking great. And so we looked at some of the other stuff that was on display. It was controller gameplay to finish off here as well. Ed, you were playing majority with a controller. How did you get on?
The controller for me was interesting. It definitely felt a lot different to what we experienced at the previous event. Although the previous event, there were all the like traction control and stuff was turned like all the way up, and I get the feeling it wasn't for us in this time. So especially with like the Indy car, it was very difficult to be able to sort of tame the beast that is the Indy car through some of the corners. It was the same thing on the rig. You had to be careful mid corner. You couldn't be like slamming it on the throttle when you're in mid corner. And basically with the controller, you just don't have the finesse to be able to like sort of have a very small amount of input as you're going mid corner. I'm sure there's probably some recordings of me messing up some corners you'll be able to see where like if you're trying to put any sort of power on in the middle of the corner, or if you even on most of the exit as well, with the controller you've got to be very delicate and controlled with how much throttle input you're putting in. So it's something that's going to favor people that are very dexterous with the controller, because you've got to be as smooth as possible with your fingers, because you cannot drive like you would on Forza, for example. On Forza, you just go all the way, you turn your steering all the way in, and it drives itself most of the way. But this is a bit more involved. I imagine there's probably some assists you can put on to make it a bit easier. There's definitely nothing on when I was driving it.
I was just going to say, controller input. When I made my Project Cars 1 videos originally, I think almost all of them was done with a controller. And some cars for me handled okay, and some cars didn't. I remember, I think it was a BMW Z4 or something. I was driving okay around the Nordschleife, but when it came to the Ford Sierra, Cosworth, it wasn't okay. It was the car would literally judder from side to side. There was almost no analog in there. It was difficult to control, and of course then the car would spin out very easily, obviously, because you're moving the wheel so violently. On the Project Cars 2, I've noticed the Indy car definitely seems to be much more sensitive in terms of working with the controller. One of the touring cars I was driving, the Acura touring car, it seemed to, again, it was a bit of a juddery movement there. It seems like it's still, now all of this we have to point out, viewers, is still a work in progress. I mean, nothing's finalized yet, but it's still, it's still not there yet, put it that way, from my experience then. But
yeah,
I suppose in some cases it depends on your assists. I mean, I would use assist with the controller a lot of the time, because I just don't have the same feel for it like I do with a wheel. So if you like to drive real cars, then there's no substitute for a wheel, but they do need to get the handling right with a controller, because 95% of people that play the game will be using a controller. So what courses did you play, Ed? Talk us through your gameplay of the evening.
So on the controller side of things, there was the same IndyCar setup as what they had on the rig, which was Long Beach in the Honda IndyCar, and then there was also both the Rallycross ones that were available on the rigs as well. So there's I forget what the actual name is for that particular Rallycross car, but it's like the junior Rallycross car, which is a bit more easy to handle. It's lower horsepower. That was on a very simple track. I have no idea what track it was. It was some foreign sounding word that I probably couldn't pronounce. So apologies for that one. But yeah, that one was interesting. It was at times the Rallycross cars were a little bit difficult to handle with the controller, because you sort of get that sort of fishtailing kind of idea that would happen sometimes. Less so in the more powerful Rallycross car, because I think I could probably control it a bit more with the throttle to correct it. But I have to say though, with the controller on Project Cars 1, there were drastic differences between different types of cars when you're playing with a controller. Like Alan was saying, those GT cars were great, and then you get in a normal car, a more road-going car, and it would tank slap everywhere. Whereas for me, the controller and how it plays on Project Cars 2 feels like it's all of a similar base, and the sort of inputs that you're doing and the reactions you're getting from the car, there's a similarity across everything. It's not like you're going from one discipline to another and you're getting a completely different experience. I'd say they've definitely honed the controller inputs as far as that goes, and it's working a lot better now. But yeah, but again, you just got to be very delicate with the controller and how it works in Project Cars 2. It's not, like I said, it's not like Forza. You can't go out of corners full throttle. You can't go into corners with full steering lock, because it will impact too greatly on how you're moving the car. But it's not so much that the stick is like directly the same as how much steering lock the car has. It's, you push into the corner and you don't want to go full in. You sort of want to go half and sort of modulate how much input you're doing all the way through. It's something I think that people are going to get better at as they put more time into it. It's a bit like Rocket League. You have to put more time into it, and there's a certain mechanical skill that you have to develop. And I felt like with Project Cars 2, there's that sort of vibe about how the controller inputs are. So I think it's good. I think they've definitely made a huge step forward with this game as far as controller inputs go.
Yeah, all around the houses, there's massive improvements been made throughout. So yeah, I mean, just to the VR for a second, it was I was going to say it was really bumpy on that simulator, and I did feel a bit of motion sickness when I first went on it. I'd like to try the VR without motion, because obviously it's a work in progress. And one thing I noticed yesterday is that the VR, you've got to really have a finely tuned motion system to work with VR. Otherwise, you don't feel right after it. But it was good catching up with everybody yesterday. So, do you have any questions, guys? Any questions on what we've covered so far?
The question everyone really wants to know the answer to is: did you beat the Stig?
Did I beat the Stig? Well, I beat the Stig. I beat the Stig just. But I was right behind Yorkie and Nick. I was pretty happy with that. I just wanted to be in the mix basically, and at the event at the time with that equipment, it's what you do on the day, and it was really good fun. So it's nice to race around, and when you see it's all very close like that, it feels more like a sort of Formula One grid. It wasn't obviously when you get on your home system. We were talking about Yorkie, we'd probably all go like 1.5 seconds faster on our own system, but that's when you can sit there and do 20 laps. We were on there for 4 laps at a time, and that was your maximum, so 3 runs, and yeah, or two Fred, and that was it. But good fun. I really enjoyed it. But wow, was it bumpy? And as I say, the VR, problem with VR is there's just not quite enough resolution. Yeah. When you're going down those long straights at Long Beach, especially when it transitioned from day to night, which we don't have on camera, it was, it's a shame because I didn't film my best run. Unfortunately, I've only got like one lap here, but I didn't film my best run. But the transition was challenging in terms of the light change and just the blurriness of
you can't make them out as you're coming down the straight, and you're looking at the brake marker that is the one that you're going to have to brake at, and it's made up of maybe 3 pixels. So it's like,
that's right. Yeah, I couldn't see it. That was actually the brake marker towards the end of the lap, and that's one of the reasons why I just didn't get that final sector right. It was very difficult to see, but no excuses. The intensity in that car was fantastic. Really enjoyed it. So above all, then, I think a very positive step. They've clearly got a huge package. I can't wait to see what more we've got in store. I can't wait to see the IndyCar stuff develop. I'm seriously going to put some time into IndyCar, I can tell you that. And yeah, Rallycross I think is a great addition. Let's look forward to what else we have in store. So just to finish off then, we'll have more coverage coming up on Project Cars. Gameplay will be coming up on the channel without us talking. You can see a bit of racing action, or maybe there'll be a bit of us talking as well. But there you go, a bit of racing action from direct feed. I will point out actually that the direct feed you've seen in this video, and we'll see a lot of it runs at 30 frames per second. Very strange that they were demoing the game at 30 frames on the PCs rather than 60. I have no idea behind that, but no doubt if you've got a good PC when it comes out, then obviously it will do whatever frame rate you want it to. And also we've got interviews with Nick Hamilton, talking a bit about his work on Project Cars 2, and of course Ben Collins as well to come. So decent interviews with both those chaps, plus gameplay and more of me just rambling on about it. But that's it from us for now, viewers. As ever, there'll be more from us very soon.